Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into a topic today that I found incredibly fascinating, the world of the Assyrian people. And we're going to be exploring it through the work of this really interesting group, the Nineveh Academic Chair. They're these scholars, and they're dedicated to bringing the Assyrian language, history, and culture back to life.
Yeah, and it's really interesting how the Assyrian story often gets simplified. People often just think about the ancient empire or the religious heritage, but this chair is going way beyond that.
So what are they trying to show us then? What's the bigger picture here?
They want to highlight the full spectrum of Assyrian identity. That means their language, their literature, even their lived experiences over thousands of years.
Okay, well, color me intrigued. But before we go any further, I think it'd be helpful to kind of set the stage. Can you tell us a little bit about, what exactly is the Nineveh Academic Chair? Like, where did they come from? What are they all about?
So they're based at the University of Salamanca in Spain. And their mission is pretty ambitious, They really want to correct all these misconceptions that have been floating around about Assyrian history, their language, and their culture.
And they've been around for a while, haven't they?
Oh, yeah. And they're not just, talking the talk. They're doing the work. They're conducting research, leading these educational programs. They even have their own journal called the Journal of Assyrian Academic Studies.
Wow, that's impressive. So it sounds like they're really committed to this idea of setting the record straight, right? Like,
Yeah.
is there a particular misconception that they're really focused on?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. One of our main focuses is how a lot of people only view Assyrian history through a religious lens. They kind of miss out on all the other parts.
Mm.
The historical, social, linguistic, even literary dimensions. It's like trying to understand a whole city by just looking at a single building.
Oh. Oh, that's a great analogy. So they're trying to broaden our perspective on Assyrian history.
Exactly. They're actually working on rewriting Assyrian history, from an Assyrian perspective.
Wow, that's ambitious.
They want to challenge all those traditional narratives that have been dominating academic discussions for so long. For example, they're doing in-depth research on events like the Assyrian genocide during World War I,
Oh, wow.
which a lot of people don't even know about. It's largely absent from mainstream history books.
Yeah, you're right. It's rarely talked about. And it really makes you think, right? Like, how important is it to hear history from the people who actually lived it, not just from some, distant outsider's point of view?
That's exactly their point. The chair argues that this narrow focus on religion has led to a fundamental misidentification of Assyrians.
You mean like thinking of them as just a religious group?
Yeah. But there's so much more than that. They're a distinct national entity with their own rich history, their own language, a vibrant culture that spans centuries.
It sounds like it's not just about rewriting history. It's about reclaiming their rightful place in the world, right?
Absolutely. They're working hard to make sure everyone understands that Assyrians are a nation. They have their own unique story, their own contributions to make to human history. And to do that, they've got this multi-pronged approach.
All right, I'm hooked.
Yeah.
So how are they doing all this? Like, what kind of research are they actually doing?
Well, they've kind of narrowed it down to three main areas where they see the most misconceptions, which are history, language, and literature. And they've got some pretty major research projects going on in each one.
Okay, let's start with history. Like, what are they doing to uncover the full scope of Assyrian history, beyond the traditional narratives?
They're undertaking this incredibly ambitious project. They want to create this comprehensive and objective history of the Assyrian people, and they're covering everything from ancient times all the way to the present day.
That sounds like a huge task.
It is. But it's not just some dry textbook rehash. They're really trying to capture those nuances, of all the crucial periods and events that have shaped who Assyrians are today, including, some of those events that often get left out of the mainstream narrative.
And so they're digging deep, right? I mean, they must be going through tons of archives and trying to piece together all these fragmented stories.
Oh, absolutely. They're looking at everything. Primary sources, archaeological evidence, linguistic analysis, even oral histories.
Wow, it's like they're putting together this giant puzzle, filling in all the missing pieces to reveal the whole picture. But how are they going to share all of this knowledge? Like, who are they trying to reach with this?
Their goal is to publish all this research in a 2-volume series. It's going to be called A History of the Assyrian People, and they even plan to translate it into multiple languages. Just imagine the impact that would have, having this comprehensive history accessible to everyone around the world.
That would be amazing. Especially if they can make it like a required text in history courses, right?
Yeah.
That would go a long way toward making sure Assyrian history is taught in schools and universities everywhere.
Exactly. And they're not just focused on academia either. They're also putting together supplementary materials, like timelines, maps, illustrations, things that make Assyrian history more accessible, more engaging for everyone.
That's so cool. I love that they're thinking about all these different ways to reach people. Okay, this is all incredible. But I'm also curious about the other parts of their work, like you mentioned language. How are they approaching the Assyrian language?
Oh, that's another fascinating part. They're taking on this huge challenge, trying to develop a comprehensive grammar for modern Assyrian. The tricky part is there are actually two main dialects, Eastern and Western, and they've evolved kind of separately over time in different regions.
So are they basically trying to bridge the gap between those communities through a unified grammar?
That's the idea. They want to make it easier for people to learn the language, but ultimately it's about fostering that sense of unity, of shared identity among Assyrians all over the world. It's not easy, though. There are all these subtle differences in vocabulary, pronunciation, even grammatical structures between the two dialects.
Yeah, I bet that's a pretty big task. Must take a lot of linguistic expertise.
Oh, definitely. But they know how important it is. Language is like the lifeblood of any culture. Without a solid foundation in their language, how can future generations really connect with and understand, their heritage?
That's a really good point. So they're creating this grammar, but are they also working on other resources to actually help people learn the language?
Oh, yeah. They're planning to put together an anthology of Assyrian literature and even a series of textbooks for different levels, from beginner to advanced. Imagine like a whole curriculum for learning Assyrian.
That would be an amazing resource, for anyone who wants to learn the language, whether they're Assyrian or just fascinated by the culture.
And they're not stopping there. They're working on finding some common ground between the two dialects, like trying to establish some basic principles for standardization so the language can continue to thrive for generations to come.
So it's not just about preserving the language as it is now. It's about looking ahead, thinking about its future, how it can adapt and evolve with the Assyrian community. That's really cool.
Mhm.
Now, let's talk about the final part of their work,
Yeah.
literature. What makes their research in this area so special?
Well, this is where we get to discover some hidden treasures. Most people, even Assyrians themselves, don't realize how rich and diverse their literary tradition is. The chair is really shining a spotlight on late and modern Assyrian literature, which is something that hasn't really gotten much attention in the academic world.
So they're diving into these works that have kind of been forgotten or overlooked.
Exactly. They're finding all these captivating novels, poems, plays that reflect the complexities of the Assyrian experience in the modern world. These works, they offer such unique insights into their cultural identity, their struggles, their resilience, their hopes for the future.
It's like opening a window into the soul of the Assyrian people.
I like that. A window into their soul.
And by sharing these literary treasures, they're not just preserving the past. They're showing how vibrant and how the culture is evolving even today.
Exactly. And they're not keeping it all to themselves, just within academia. They're promoting Assyrian literature through translations. They're doing public readings. They're collaborating with literary organizations all over the world.
It's amazing. They're creating this whole movement to celebrate and share
Hmm.
Assyrian culture. But before we get too carried away, I do want to acknowledge that this is probably pretty challenging work, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the hurdles they're facing in all of this?
You're right. It's never easy to challenge like the established way of thinking, especially in academia. One of the biggest challenges for them is simply getting people to take their research seriously,
Yeah.
to get recognized by the broader academic community.
It's like they're going up against like a wall of preconceptions, of biases that are so deeply rooted.
Yeah, it's a real uphill battle.
And I'm guessing finding funding for their research projects and the scholarships they offer is probably a constant struggle too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Academic research relies so heavily on grants and donations, and they're competing with countless other worthy projects for very limited resources. It's a real challenge to convince potential funders of the value of their work.
So it's not just about the research itself. They also need to be strategic,
Right.
Like good at fundraising, building relationships with institutions that can support them financially.
For sure. It takes a lot of work, combining their academic rigor with smart planning and the ability to really communicate their vision in a compelling way.
It sounds like they have their work cut out for them. But I have to say, Their passion, their dedication, it's really inspiring. I have a feeling they're going to find a way to overcome these challenges.
Yeah, they're not just academics, they're passionate advocates for their community, driven by this deep commitment to preserving and celebrating their heritage. And it's contagious, their enthusiasm. It's really inspiring to see how dedicated they are to this cause.
I feel inspired already, and we've only just scratched the surface.
So before we went to that little break there, we were talking about all the challenges,
Yeah.
right?
All the things that the Nineveh academic chair is up against, trying to really change how people think about Assyrian history and culture.
Right. Like even within academia, they're dealing with like biases and funding issues, all that.
But sounds like they're not letting that stop them.
No, definitely not. Their mission goes way beyond just research and scholarship. They want to reach a global audience.
Well, yeah, you mentioned earlier that they're putting a lot of effort into raising awareness about the Assyrian cause. How are they actually doing that?
They're really proactive, you know? Like one of their main strategies is they organize all these international events, congresses, seminars, symposia, that kind of thing.
So, like, bringing together all the experts.
Exactly. Leading scholars, researchers, people from the Assyrian community worldwide all come together to talk about their findings, share ideas, get those perspectives out there.
That's going to be pretty powerful, having all those voices in one place. But are these events, like, just for academics?
Yeah.
Or can anyone attend?
They try to have a mix. Some are more, scholarly focused, but they also do public lectures, exhibitions, even film screenings. Anyone can go to those.
Oh, that's cool. Makes sense. You gotta make this stuff accessible if you want people to get it.
All right, exactly. And their outreach, it goes beyond just these events. They're always looking to collaborate, with other institutions, foundations, research institutes.
Oh, interesting. Like, who are they working with?
They've got partnerships with like prestigious universities in Europe and North America.
Oh, yeah.
They do joint research projects, exchange programs, so scholars and students can collaborate across borders. And they've also got connections with museums and cultural institutions so they can showcase like Assyrian artifacts, artwork.
That's fantastic. Really taking it to a global level.
It's all about building this network of support, right, for the Assyrian cause. And it shows their commitment to not just preserving the past, but, really shaping the future.
And speaking of the future, you mentioned their work with younger generations.
Yeah.
Like those scholarship programs. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, they've got all these scholarships for Assyrian students, specifically for those studying like history, linguistics, literature, cultural studies, those areas. It's not just the financial help, though. They also provide mentorship, guidance, all of that.
So it's about cultivating like the next generation of Assyrian scholars and leaders.
Exactly. And they've got this even bigger vision, too. They want to establish an actual Assyrian academic council.
Oh, wow. Like a formal body.
Yeah. They'd be like a central hub to coordinate research, set academic standards, and really advocate for including Assyrian studies in universities all over the world.
That would be huge. Really legitimizing it as a field of study.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Creating that infrastructure so Assyrians can tell their own stories, do their own research, shape their own future.
It's really impressive what they're doing. It's not just about the past. It's about building a brighter future for the Assyrian people.
And their work, it goes beyond just the Assyrian community. It challenges how we think about history, about cultural diversity, about identity.
That's what we're all about here on The Deep Dive.
Yeah.
Exploring those hidden stories, broadening our understanding of the world.
Absolutely. And as we keep going with this deep dive into the Nineveh Academic Chair's work, I'm really interested in what they're doing with some of the lesser known aspects of Assyrian history.
Oh, like what?
Like their agriculture, for example, and their advancements in like math and astronomy.
Now that sounds fascinating. I definitely want to hear more about that. It's amazing how much there is to learn about the Assyrians.
It really is. And it's all about going beyond those basic narratives.
Well, I can't wait to dive in. All right, I'm ready to hear about those hidden gems of Assyrian history you mentioned. Like, what's the deal with their agriculture?
Well, you might be surprised to learn that they were way ahead of their time when it came to irrigation.
Really?
Yeah, they developed these intricate canal systems, and that let them, farm all this fertile land in Mesopotamia, which is otherwise pretty dry.
Wow. So they were able to kind of work around their environment. That's pretty impressive.
Oh, absolutely. And it wasn't just about, staying alive. Their agriculture was like the backbone of their economy. They could produce all these extra crops, and that led to trade, expansion, all of that.
It's crazy how something like farming can have such a huge impact on a whole civilization.
Right.
It makes you think about how all the different parts of a culture are kind of woven together.
And you see that connection with their scientific advancements too. Like they were really into astronomy and math. They were some of the first to map out constellations, track the planets, even predict eclipses.
No way. Seriously. So they were making these big scientific discoveries like centuries ago. That's incredible. What did all this astronomy stuff do for them, though?
Well, knowing about the cycles of the stars and stuff, that helped them with their agriculture, figuring out the best times to plant and harvest.
Oh, that makes sense.
And it also tied into their religious beliefs, like they saw the heavens as this reflection of like divine order and power.
It's cool how their scientific curiosity and their spiritual beliefs were kind of all mixed together.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's their math too. They were really skilled in math.
What kind of stuff were they doing?
They developed these really complex systems for measurement, calculations, record keeping, all that. They were great with geometry, used it for everything, like surveying land, designing buildings, even planning military stuff.
Wow.
And they had this whole system of weights and measures that helped them with like trading all across their empire.
So all this math was basically helping them run a successful civilization.
Yeah, building stuff, managing the empire, doing business, all that.
Man, they were busy.
Oh, yeah. And all this stuff, the math and the astronomy, it wasn't just like random achievements. It shows they had this whole culture that valued knowledge and innovation. Like they had libraries full of clay tablets, all filled with their discoveries, historical records, even literature. They really wanted to preserve and pass down that knowledge.
That's amazing. We're really getting a whole new picture of this civilization.
Mhm.
They were so much more advanced than I think a lot of people realize.
That's exactly what the Nineveh Academic Chair is trying to show us. They want us to challenge those limited views we have and see the Assyrian legacy for what it truly is.
It's not just about the empires and the kings, right?
Right. It's about the everyday people, their culture, their discoveries, all the things they contributed to the world.
Their work is honestly so important, not just for Assyrians, but for anyone who loves learning about history and culture.
Well said. As we wrap up our deep dive into the Nineveh Academic Chair, I'm curious, how do you think understanding the Assyrian experience, their resilience, their accomplishments, even their fight for recognition, how does all that fit into the bigger conversations about cultural preservation, identity, and the importance of different perspectives?
That's a really great question. I hope everyone listening takes some time to think about that as they learn more about the Assyrian people. This deep dive has been, well, truly eye-opening. I've learned so much that I never knew before.
It's been great talking about this with you. And remember, this is just a tiny taste of what's out there. There's so much more to discover about Assyrian history and culture.
Absolutely. I encourage everyone to keep exploring, check out some of the work by Assyrian scholars, maybe connect with the Assyrian community, see what you find.
Keep learning, folks.